Hey everyone, Callie here from Callie's Speculation Station, and let's get into the preview of 9.2 Eternity's End that WoW has just given us a couple days ago, and we're going to talk about some of the main lore takeaways we got from their preview. So without any wasted time, let's get straight to it. So we're introduced to Zereth Mortis and the final raid of Shadowlands, the Sepulcher of the First Ones. Now this is the Jailer's end goal, his end game, if you will, where he's being attempted to get to reset the rules of reality and make everyone bend their knee to him. Now, at the end of 9.1, we saw him take Anduin into a portal. We, of course, now know where he went. He gave back the missing portion of Sylvanas' soul, and we're going to be dealing with that, of course, in 9.2. But in the preview, the main two takeaways, I think, are 1, the Anduin encounter, and 2, where are we really? And I'm going to give you the evidence to where I think that is. But first, let's talk about the Anduin encounter. The first thing we really notice from the video they give us is that Uther, Jaina, and Sylvanas are present in this encounter. The voiceover talks about how this encounter is important because through Anduin we're going to learn how to counter the domination magic of the Jailer. Now, one thing I think is missing from all this is to go back to the Afterlives Uther cinematic we were given prior to Shadowlands. We see him take the soul of Arthas and throw it into the maw, and we never saw Arthas again. Now, of course, I referenced the end of the 9.1 raid, where we saw the Jailer give Sylvanas back the missing fragment of her soul, and that's important because in that moment we saw him reach into the medicine cabinet of souls that he keeps, pull out a crystal, crush it, and of course we know now what that is. We saw that in an earlier cinematic. He reach into whatever pocket dimension he has, retrieve a crystal, hand it to his forge master, and they forged it into the Morn blade that he's using to control Anduin now. I think that was Arthas' soul, what's left of it. I think in this encounter, it's important to learn how to counter domination magic from the very person who knows it best, and that's Arthas. He spent more time as the Lich King than anyone. He would know the ins and outs of that magic better than anybody. And who better to get through to the paladin, priest if you will, of Anduin than one himself who's been in this very position? Why else would you have Uther in this encounter? He has no tie to Anduin. These are the main players of Warcraft 3 brought back for the final chapter of Arthas and Sylvanas' and Uther's story. It's also going to put to rest Jaina's story with Arthas. We still see some remnants throughout, the last few years talking about how she loved him, and they can put that to rest now. I think in this encounter we're going to see either a broken or split Morn blade. I think Arthas is going to show up similar to how his father did at the end of Icecrown. He's going to play that role, help us save Anduin, and help us learn about domination magic. I think it's a good way to tie the story up. I think it's perfect in a way that gives everybody a little bit of what they want. Some people don't want any Arthas story, some people do. I think this is a perfect way to then allow him to be put into the machinery of death and to see where he really ends up. And that'd be the final chapter of Arthas. It'll also lead us to the final chapter of Sylvanas. Now I'm going to do a separate video on why Elune spared her and Tyrande and that story. So we're going to leave it there with that. I think it also closes out Uther's story. But let's get into the real reason we're here and talk about where is Zereth Mortis, the Sepulcher of the First Ones. And my main theory goes back to the pre-patch event of Shadowlands. In the pre-patch in Icecrown, the Herald of the Jailer specifically says that his master comes for the soul of this world. It's mentioned once more in Shadowlands, but after that it's kind of left to be that the Jailer's just trying to escape the maw. But the whole reason for his escape is to get to this world soul. Something he talks about is his. But it's never went into why he feels this way. But remember, he talks about he's going to reset reality. If we reference the cosmology chart, we know that Azeroth, Shadowlands, and the Emerald Dream make up reality as we know it. Another small, interesting, maybe not related, but I'm tying it to it anyway, fact is that the Malagos encounter happened in the Eye of Eternity. And now we're at Eternity's End. Maybe they're hinting to each other. I don't know. But I'm throwing it in there anyway. Well, my theory is that the Sepulcher is in Azeroth. That's a crazy thing to say. It's almost hollow earth, if you will. Well, a couple little hints, I think, were in the preview. The first one is they talk about how gravity works different in Zereth Mortis. They specifically say that gravity works different than on Azeroth. Maybe that's because we're in Azeroth. But my main piece of evidence comes from the Constellar preview. The Constellar encounter starts with the camera angle pointed up at an orb that, if you stop and look at carefully, has constellations in it. If that looks familiar, then head over to the World Soul section of Anduin, because after the Agrimar encounter, you're looking out on the World Soul of Argus, and they match. This is the visual depiction of a World Soul, an orb with these constellations in it. So we're looking at Azeroth's World Soul here. This brings full circle with what the Herald says, and the Constellar in the preview also mentions Algalon. They say that it's the same race. I don't think they're dropping that name lightly. I think this is Algalon. We can't see his appearance because, of course, the jailer has used his domination magic, and the armor covers what giveaway there may be. Now, of course, it could just be another Constellar, but it doesn't quite make sense as to what a Constellar is doing here. We had them in Anduin as part of the Argus encounter. So it leads to my part of the theory where I say that the Sepulcher itself must be a Titan facility. That doesn't necessarily mean that the first ones are the Titans. It could be a hint that they are. I think they're a separate group. However, I think the Titans worked alongside, or at least picked up their work where they left off, or at least part of the machinery of this whole universe and how it's supposed to work. But the Sepulcher, I think, is inside Azeroth. I think that this may be the missing Titan facility known as Uldaz. If you remember in Battle for Azeroth, the Maiden starts naming Titan facilities, one of those being Uldorus, which sounds very similar to Anduin. Well, one of those on the list is Uldaz. Now, we don't know Uldaz at all. Maybe Uldaz and Zereth Mortis and the Sepulcher of the first ones are one and the same. Well, Zereth Mortis, of course, being the pocket dimension that Uldaz or the Sepulcher is contained within. Now, I mentioned pocket dimension for a reason. If you remember in the history of how things came to be, Ra and Helya created the pocket dimensions such as the elemental planes, the halls of valor. They're realms within realms. Now, that's a great way to contain a world soul within the planet itself and keep it safe. Possibly another security measure to keep the void away. Now, Helya was recruited to the jailer's side after Odin peeked into the Shadowlands. Of course, after he made his deal with who we now know as Muzala, a jailer ally from back in the day. I think that all laid the groundwork to get where we are. I think that through trading the eye with Muzala, they corrupted or at least planted the seed to turn Helya. All of this has been in the works to get where we are now, and that is at the World Soul. Now, a little more proof? Okay. If you look in the background at the Constellar encounter, you'll see these runes on the wall. These runes, as I'm showing you now, match or are very similar to runes on the temple on Elinaria as you're approaching the Aeonar encounter. Now, of course, we don't know where Elinaria is. I think it's described as a planet. It could be a pocket dimension as well. Seems like these Titans are big on realities within realities. So, again, this tends to lead me towards this is a Titan facility. That these runes match runes that are also on a temple or structures related to a Titan. So again, it's little breadcrumbs, I think, that are leading to this idea. And of course, if you look at it on its face, the Herald did say he comes for the soul of this world, and he has said from the beginning that it was his. So I think it's a perfect way to close out Shadowlands with him attempting to get what he wants, and that being the soul of our world. Comment down below what you think. Hit the like button. Please subscribe. I've got a couple more videos in the works. We're going to completely break down some of the other things that I noticed in the 9.2 preview, including, I think, the origin of the Curse of Flesh, the Sylvanas storyline closeout, and a few other tidbits there. Check me out on Twitter. It's at Khalion. Throw me an email, Khaliionwow@gmail.com. And of course, in the description below is a link to our podcast. That is the Lichcast, hosted by Zidge. I'm co-host on there. It's a great time. It's a weekly, bi-weekly podcast where we talk about WoW news, life. We throw around some theories every now and then. And then, of course, we do have some subjects that we hit, where we talk, say, old raids or anything like that. So if you have any ideas or any type of suggestion, hey, throw it in the comments, send us an email. Thank you for taking the time with this video, and have a great day.